My name is Izziria. I go by Z. I'm originally from New York, born and raised, moved here. It'll be 9 years in July, excuse me, which is crazy. Yeah. So I think I struggled with art for a really long time. My mom went to SVA for fine arts and really encouraged my artistic ability at a very young age, which I rebelled against because it's like, I'm not going to do what you did. Like, I'm not going to be like you, kind of concept. And so for a long time, I skirted the strong feeling of creation and I just did other things, or like I mentioned before, I made things due to need, necessity, and convenience of having it there. So like making a lamp because I needed something for a small space. And so for a long time, not creating felt like a severed limb. And it was really painful to not do. And so I started really focusing more on art in the last, I would say, like 3 or 4 years. I think that there are some things that I pick up that I am immediately like, this is a need for this outlet. And then there are other things where I'm like, this is fun to do, but this isn't necessary for my well-being. It really varies, and I think that's why I focus on so many different mediums, because different mediums call out. I feel like there's more attractive ways that I can say it, but I'm a trash artist, so most of my current pieces, if they're not 50%, they're 100% recycled materials, which is kind of something that I have focused on for the last, I would say, 12 years of creating. It's varied in intensity, but that has always been like the backbone of my practice. I just kind of felt overwhelmed with the amount of trash that I am somehow responsible for. So it really kind of started when I was purchasing a lot online, and then I was like getting all these like bubble wrap mailers, and I was like, what do I do with these? These aren't recyclable. I also fell in love with these tiny little pieces of trash on the street. Like I just visited home and I found a piece of tape measure that was like bent to shit and rusty, but it has like kind of like the iconic ribbon floating in air pressed into it directly, and so it's just like this really nice strip, and it was just in the street like getting run over by cars, and so I was like, no, this could be something. I feel like I can see things possible with the materials that are everyday or commonly thrown out, and like, what can I salvage and make beautiful and make people reconsider not only their consumption, but like what constitutes as beautiful. I have learned that I can be kind of a perfectionist in aspects of my life, and I've been working on scaling back from that. I have a rough idea in my head, but I am letting the materials speak and understanding that my skill is where it's at and I can't progress if I'm not making anything. The piece that will be at the show was an outlet during a really rough time, to the point where I just got so deterred that I put it down for 2 years, and then I picked it back up, and then like it was started in turmoil and seeking personal joy, and then was finished with joy, but there was just like this really much needed lapse. And so when people see it, their first question is like, why is it still in the loom? And for me, there's a reasoning to that, but like, people don't necessarily need to know that or need to see that. Like, the tension is like so intrinsically part of this piece. Like, it would not be the same if it was just hanging on a dowel. And so most of my work obviously open to interpretation, but I feel like the main point is the materials themselves and like highlighting those. I find that not everybody appreciates my explanations. I feel like the way I have things set up in here and the art that I'm trying to produce it's not going to fit everybody's interest and house and aesthetic, and that's fine. If I had that more, my art as a product mindset, I would have a more refined approach, and I think because I'm still not quite there where I want to do sales like that, then I leave more people just like in that state. There's certain things that, like, the idea that I had for them, I have reached, and I'm like, okay, either it's done or it's missing something. The paper piece that I embroidered together that's hanging up on the wall outside when we walked in, my roommate, who's a really good friend of mine, she made this giant piece behind me. She's like, oh, I thought that was done. And I was like, oh, well, like, it was supposed to be 6 feet long. And she was like, I mean, you could, but like, what would that tell you? Like, what would the piece say that it isn't already saying? It didn't feel finished to me for a really long time. And then when she said that, it changed my perspective of it. And then, like, looking at it, it's like, oh, this is done. Like, this is very different, and I could add more to it if I wanted to, but it wouldn't be the same piece and it wouldn't say the same story that it does now. So I do struggle with thinking things are done, but it's also like, am I seeking the perfectionism in my head, or am I appreciating the piece for what it is at its current state? That feeling I had that I told you for years, I felt like art was a severed limb, because people get phantom pains from severed limbs, and they, like, when they dream, they typically have the limb that they lost, and so it's still painful to think about because I still feel to some degree that, like, what I'm doing isn't enough, or what I'm not creating what I want to create, and that's either due to lack of time dedicated or lack of knowledge about the materials I want to use, or lack of space. And so with those three things, I think combating them is really, like, work with what you have, build community, super important, and I think the benefit of art is that there's so many different fields within art, and I mean, there's, like I said, there's 80 plus painters here, but maybe like 2 of them do the same style. Like, it's very, very wide open, and so I feel like that is an opportunity of just surrounding yourself with people who do like-minded things but are very different. That is super important.